The biggest names in sports are all on IsraelSportsRadio.com.
All right, back here on Lewis Live on IsraelSportsRadio.com. Our next guest has worked for E.S.P.N. since August 2003. He's done a lot of great stuff. Born in Seattle, Washington, so we wanted to bring him on partly so we could talk a little Sonics. Just want to tell about some of the things Steve has done. Worked on Outside the Lines, Sports Center, Baseball Tonight, NFL Live, College Football Live, and connection with me in that he used to work in Flagstaff and KNAZ TV. I always loved that station growing up in Phoenix. In 1998, the Arizona Associated Press named him Best TV Sportscaster, awarded him the Best TV Sports Coverage, and the Michigan Associated Press awarded him Best TV Sportscast in 2000. Hey, Steve, are you there?
I am. Manishma.
Manishma, Baruch Shem, we're very happy to have you aboard, and a lot of stuff to talk about. We'll first get to Big Ben Block because he's the one who set up this interview. Got to give him a lot of credit. So I want to talk about the Sonics. We're going to play this clip in one moment, but Ben mentions all the time stolen Sonics at least once a week. And outside of the Northwest, the Sonics, it's somewhat forgotten that the Oklahoma City Thunder used to be the Sonics. So, but in Seattle, is it still a pain that the Sonics have parted ways with the city of Seattle?
Yeah, it's still a very raw emotion. And I think, credit to Ben, and I try to do this myself. I try to sort of carry that torch of reminding people that this, in the terms of sports, travesty happened. I mean, this was a city that supported the team, a team that wasn't always that successful, but we had big crowds and a passionate fan base and a team that was on the up and up. I think that's one of the hardest things for Seattle fans is that after a pretty low decade, the team had drafted Kevin Durant, had drafted Russell Westbrook, and was on the verge of getting better, and you could see this future that now the Thunder have developed. And you wanted to take ownership of that after suffering through sort of the Ray Allen era. As beautiful a player as he was, we weren't a great team with him. And for a variety of reasons, and there's tons of blame to go around, from the Sonics' old ownership under Howard Schultz, to the owner Clay Bennett of the Oklahoma City Thunder, to Commissioner David Stern, to the fans a little bit, to the politicians a lot, to the government. There's a lot of blame to be had, and unfortunately, fans in Seattle are left without a team. So I think it is incumbent upon those of us who are passionate about it to remind the world that we deserve a team. We didn't do anything wrong. We didn't screw up a stadium lease. We did not show up for games, and the Seattle fans are the ones left with nothing.
Well said, and Seattle had some great teams in the 90s, were a nemesis to my Phoenix Suns. 93, the Great Western Conference Finals, won 7 games. I'm going to play the clip of Outside the Lines right now, Steve. So excuse me, still not ready yet. What I want to ask about that, you mentioned Howard Schultz, and at the end of the day, was that a situation where Howard just wanted to leave Seattle and go to a different place?
I'm having trouble hearing you. I'm on my cell phone driving on a Connecticut highway. Try one more time.
Sure. With the situation with Seattle, because Ben has told me all different types of stories, but basically was that Howard just at one point was not interested in being in Seattle anymore? Was that kind of the bottom line?
No, I mean, here's what happened. He was losing money on the team on a yearly basis. Now, when he sold the team, he made millions of dollars of profit. But at the time, the team was losing money, in large part because the arena deal was not up to par for what the NBA now demands of its franchises. So, for instance, the parking there, the team didn't generate any money out of the parking. It was at an individual facility like across the street. So whereas people who park at the facility in Memphis, the Grizzlies get all that money. So the Seattle Sonics didn't get any of that money. They also didn't have a lot of luxury suites. And in Seattle, they had just built a stadium for the Seahawks and a specific stadium for the Mariners. So among the voters, there was a little bit of stadium fatigue, like every team doesn't need its own new stadium. And Key Arena had been built just in 1999, or renovated, I should say. So it wasn't that old when the situation came up, and this was about 2003, 4, 5. People there just didn't want to put any more public money into it, which was understandable. But Oklahoma City built a stadium just in the hopes that it would get a team, and it had all those things. So for the NBA, their point was, look, Seattle, this is the price of being in the league. You have to have a stadium that matches up. And Seattle voters wouldn't put it out there, and Howard Schultz wouldn't foot the bill, and none of the other rich Seattleites, from Microsoft and Boeing to on, they didn't step up, not in time anyway. So the NBA's point of view was, look, Oklahoma City is willing to do it. You are not. We're moving the team to Oklahoma City. But it's not really the fault of the fans, other than that when it came voting time, they didn't want to put any more of their own money into it. That's understandable, and I think that's very reasonable. I think what's unreasonable is for Howard Schultz to sell the team to an owner who he knew in his heart of hearts was going to move the team to Oklahoma City. Because Clay Bennett had always said he wanted to bring a team to Oklahoma City. There's no chance he was going to keep the team in Seattle. The commissioner knew that. He allowed it to happen. Schultz sold it to him instead of holding out for a different owner from Seattle to take over or from somebody else to step up from the stadium. But the government failed. The lawyers failed at the end of the day when there was a big trial. Schultz failed. Bennett failed. All these people failed, and Seattle and the fans are the ones who have to deal with it.
Now, my understanding is part of the deal with the Sonics leaving is that if Seattle gets a new team, they get the banners back that the Sonics had. Now, what I want to know is, what are the chances and the odds of a team coming to Seattle? We hear the Kings sometimes are not happy in Sacramento. Is there a realistic possibility that a team could move to Seattle and become the new Sonics?
Yeah, and that was one of the brilliant parts of that film, Sonicsgate, that you guys have that clip of, is that if that happens, it'll be at the expense of some other city's poor fans.
Right.
So, and maybe that's a city like the Charlotte Bobcats, but that city hasn't really supported an NBA team. Or the New Orleans Hornets, who haven't always supported that team, although they have recently. Or the Memphis Grizzlies, who, again, have not supported that team at all until they made their last playoff run. So the sad thing is that for Seattle fans, the bottom line is if we do improve our arena situation, we probably will land a team, and there'll be someone else's fans left in the balance. But, that's the lay of the land. And so, yeah, the Seattle, they will be called the Sonics. They will have the history. They will be able to say we won a title in '79. So if the Thunder win a title, they can't say it's the second title for them. It'll be their first. And Seattle, sort of like the Cleveland Browns, when the Browns left to become the Baltimore Ravens,
right.
Eventually Cleveland got another team. In their case, it was an expansion team, so it wasn't at the expense of anyone else. But the NBA is losing hundreds of millions of dollars, so it's not going to expand, and that also complicates things for fans in Seattle. It's just a sad situation. I know a lot of pockets in Israel are basketball crazy, and that's how it is in Seattle too. It's a basketball crazy town, from the high school level to the college with Gonzaga and Washington State, up to the pros and to the players who have made it in the NBA. I think there's like 13 or 17, which is a crazy number for a city the size of Seattle. For the Brandon Roys and Jason Terry, who just won a title with the Mavericks, for those guys to not have a team that they could go back to and call their hometown team is truly sad.
Now, we're on the verge of potentially missing an NBA season, or at least a short season with this lockout. Hopefully things get taken care of. But it does not look good, and I bring this up because the last time there was a lockout in 1999, it killed a couple of careers. I would say most notably Sean Kemp. Kemp obviously had some other problems, but not going through the training camp ballooned and really wasn't the same. And just a few years after, he played that great NBA Finals against the Bulls. So talk a little bit about that, and do you see some players currently that could be ruined by another lockout?
Well, I wouldn't connect the dots in that way. I mean, I think the lockout played a small role for Sean Kemp, but he was sort of eating his way out of the league and had other problems that you alluded to that contributed to his downfall. And whether or not there was a lockout, I think those problems would have festered and presented themselves. Most notably was a legitimate jealousy of the contract Jim McIlvain got with the Sonics, sort of a big white stiff, and Kemp was the All-Pro and wasn't getting paid like it. So he was legitimately upset about that. And then that, combined with his other issues, led to his downfall. I don't know if there wasn't a lockout that he wouldn't have ended up on that downswing, which was a sad way to end a brilliant career. But that being said, it's just hard to know. It's hard to know how long this is going to last because the players and the owners are so far apart compared to the NFL lockout, where it was really about how are we going to split up this $9 billion pie. The problem here is the owners and players can't agree how big the pie is. And the owners are saying that the pie is, it's not there is no pie. They're losing, they claim $300 million this past year. And the players are saying that's just not true. That's just having some fun with numbers. And there have been some journalistic pieces out there that really vouch for the players' perspective. So in terms of, I think if you're looking for that sort of a trajectory, you're going to try to find some aging player, like take an Elton Brand, who had some flashes of his old self this season, but basically hasn't been the same player since he got his big contract and got hurt. And
right.
That's usually what contributes to that, is either a big contract, which snuffs a lot of guys' motivation, or injuries, which you can't do anything about. And those among us who have gotten hurt just playing pickup basketball or whatever level of whatever sport we've played, that sometimes you're just not the same. And for those guys at that elite level, when so much of your success depends on your athleticism, if you lose 2% of that athleticism with a legitimate injury, that's your game. I mean, now there's 98% of the guys who are now just as good as you. So for a guy like Sean Kemp to put on 20 pounds, and his game was about flying over everyone else and being quicker. He lost that. He lost his excellence.
All right, we have that clip geared up here. This is, of course, when you hosted Outside the Lines.
And now, sitting in for Bob Lee, Steve Bunin.
Even with last night's loss, the Oklahoma City Thunder has made its mark on these NBA playoffs, pushing the Lakers to at least a Game 6 in their first-round series. Meanwhile, the city of Seattle remains thunderstruck by the confluence of events that led the franchise to leave the Pacific Northwest 2 years ago after 41 years in existence. This week, the critically acclaimed film Sonicscape makes its East Coast premiere in New York City. Documenting the tragicomic letdowns by the local and state government, Commissioner David Stern, former team owner Howard Schultz, current owner Clay Bennett, and a host of others, Sonicscape poignantly chronicles the rise and demise of the Seattle Supersonics.
So, Steve, when I see you there, not so much about the Sonics, but personally, what type of thrill was that to host Outside the Lines? Such a great show for a long time. Bob Lee does an amazing job. You stepped in there and did a great job as well. So tell us, to the fans here in Israel, what was that like to host that show?
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you that specific show was a bittersweet one because I was very proud to be able to tell that story on a national level, and I really tried to make sure that we were covering it fairly, and not just from a poor Seattle point of view, but from why this is a big deal for fans in Sacramento and fans in Memphis and fans in Charlotte, fans in New Orleans that are in danger of losing their teams. So that specifically, I was very proud of that show, and as a lifelong Seattle fan, the ability to bring it there. I've been very lucky here at E.S.P.N. I've been here about 8 years, and for the last 4 or so, I would say I've been able to be Bob's top backup on Outside the Lines, and I've done so many shows that I'm really proud of. It's a show that's our most journalistic show, I would say. It's long form. It's sort of like the Nightline of sports. So it's one topic, 30 minutes on that. It's not the sort of barroom debate that is fun, but of which is the better Manning quarterback, or who's going to have the tougher schedule, which rookie quarterback will have the most or least success in the NFC North this year. Those debates are fun, and I love having them, but this show takes a different tack. The show we did today was about a former NFL player with early onset dementia and the issues that concussions are having. We did a show 2 weeks ago about homophobia in men's team sports. When will an athlete in America come out as gay in a team sport atmosphere while he's still playing? And we did a story on Native American nicknames in sports. Are they offensive? What if there's a team called the Washington Redskins, as you all know.
Right.
It's just blatantly offensive to a huge part of the population. If there was a team called the Washington Jews, or worse, the Washington Kikes, what would the outcry be? And then why isn't there a similar outcry from any community for the Washington Redskins or the North Dakota Fighting Sioux? So stories like that I really enjoy being a part of, and that's what Outside the Lines does. And Bob Lee, Emmy Award winning, he's been here from day one. It's a true honor for me to say that I get to do a show that he often does. And so I did it today. I'm doing it tomorrow. It's a total thrill, and it's the show that I find most rewarding at E.S.P.N. It's one of the reasons I love being.
Bob Lee's one of the best in the business, and in many respects, that is my favorite show because it's so in-depth, so detailed. It goes to real issues that are beyond sports, social issues. And again, you're right on. I've brought that point up many times on this station. What if it was the New York Jews or the Chicago Blacks or who knows? I don't know if people would stand for it. And nothing is changed, but I think it's important to at least bring it up, and maybe at some point, at some time, it will be changed. You never know. One last question, Steve, before we let you go. Of course, you used to work in Flagstaff, and I'm from Arizona. I used to love going up to Flagstaff. Great city.
Great.
Amazing city. So talk about your time there and what you did for KNAZ-TV.
Yeah, so I got hired there. I had been laid off from my previous job in Binghamton, New York, not exactly the biggest metropolis in America. And I'm interviewing for the job. I was back home in Seattle playing basketball with Ben and his dad probably at the Jewish Community Center there. And I get a phone call. It's my job interview, and it all comes down to this. The guy says, can you drive a stick shift? He doesn't want to know about my sports theories or what I would do. Just, can you drive a stick shift? I said, yeah. And thank God that 7 years earlier, my big brother had taught me how to drive a stick shift, because those were the cars that they had. So the car I'm driving around to, cover the high school basketball and high school football games and the 11-year-old weightlifting girl. It was a stick-shift car. Other than that, I wouldn't have had the job. So that was, October 97, I got the job there. I had a great time there. It was one of those small market experiences that I think a lot of people in journalism can relate to, but anyone who's had to pay their dues in any profession, I think, can empathize with the struggles of working at a small market station where things are always breaking down. The teleprompter, the camera, the tape machine, the editors, the computers that we had. The one computer that had internet at that time. We had like 12 computers in the room. Only one had internet, so you had to share it with the weather guy and the news crew, and you're the sports. You're the last part. So there were a lot of those sorts of times that were very character-building. But I loved it. Flagstaff is a beautiful town. When I moved to Arizona, I expected 90 degrees every day. Flagstaff's up in the mountains. It's at 8,000 feet. It's higher than Denver. So it's actually quite cold in the winter. It snows, and you get evergreen trees. And it's one of the most beautiful cities that I've lived in, and I've lived all over the country. I've, of course, been to Israel, but I haven't lived there. And I had a blast, really, in this small market mentality. The one guy who made it big out of there who was the head coach of the men's basketball team, Ben Howland.
Right.
And they were the highest scoring team in the country at the time. They had a bunch of guys who could shoot. It was just like watching Hoosiers. He moved on to Pitt and then moved now, obviously, at UCLA. And for both of us, it was sort of where we started. It was his first head coaching job at Northern Arizona University, and it was my first job that I held for more than 3 months in the business of broadcasting. So after a couple of years, I moved to Lansing, Michigan. Got to cover the national title-winning team there with Mateen Cleaves in 2000. Got laid off of that job 1 year after that. Spent a year and a half out of the business playing basketball, teaching as a substitute teacher at some Jewish schools in Seattle. I was a high school basketball coach, and then eventually got a job in Battle Creek, Michigan, which led to my job at E.S.P.N. It was a crazy way to start, and I always think fondly of Flagstaff because it's just a beautiful city in a great, great state.
I have so much nostalgia and joy talking to you about Flagstaff because the way you describe the trees, it's just a great place, and I used to love going up there. You kind of just drive and just enjoy nature and look at the beautiful scenery. So it is a great town, and I'm very happy everything worked out. I mean, who would have thought at those times you were laid off that you would end up being on E.S.P.N. for a long period of time?
Nobody would have thought it.
But you turned into a great career, and Steve, we really appreciate the time on Lewis Live and IsraelSportsRadio.com, and we got to do it again real soon.
Yeah, I'd be thrilled anytime.
Thanks so much, Steve. Really appreciate it. Shabbat Shalom, and be safe out there, and have a good one.
Lehi Tahot.